With President Donald Trump all set to continue and expand President Obama's fossil fuel policies, the British government appears to want to attenuate its pro-fracking stance with something called smart meters. Theresa May wants to roll out 53 million smart meters by 2020. They're supposed to save the environment, be free, and save householders money with lower electricity bills. But is that all true? Royal Television Society award-winning journalist Choi, the consumer editor of UK TV news company ITN, has been investigating the true cost of smart meters, and his documentary is to be broadcast on ITV in Britain tomorrow. Chris, thanks for coming on the show. What can possibly be wrong with UK electricity users monitoring their energy use using these meters?
There's a lot to be said for it. The meters that are in our homes at the moment, some of them predate the internet era. They were going to need replacing at some stage. The question mark comes when we're talking about the incredible cost of this rollout. It is the biggest IT infrastructure project in UK history. It's enormous. It's one of the biggest IT projects, non-military, in the world. And yet, how often have you heard it being discussed? Has it been subjected to the kind of parliamentary scrutiny that you might expect for such a huge sum of money? It's going to cost £11 billion. Now, that is such a large sum that I actually just think it's worth pausing to consider what that means.
You talk about parliamentary scrutiny. Of course, Britain's electricity system was entirely privatised, and in fairness to what the government seems to be saying, is at least they are free to the consumer. I know that's what you investigate in the documentary.
Well, yeah, this word free crops up an awful lot in the industry's marketing of smart meters. They want every home and business in Britain to have one of these meters. They don't want any resistance. So whilst they have taken out an awful lot of advertising on TV, in the papers and online to talk about what they see as the benefits, they talk far less about the cost. Ultimately, that cost will not be paid by the energy industry. That will be paid by consumers. It will be passed on to them on their bills for years and years to come. And it's for that reason, because it is essentially consumers' money, that we need to analyse whether this is good value for all those millions.
I don't want to give it all away, but you do confront a CEO of one of the biggest privatised power companies. The government minister wouldn't appear, but at least he goes, OK, maybe they're not free.
Yeah, I spoke to Will Morris, who is one of the heads at SSE, the second biggest energy supplier in the UK with 8 million customers. He said, we're not saying they're free. Thinking that they're free is a misconception, but in their own paperwork, in their advertising, at SSE it said free. Still, today you will find mention of free smart meters in a lot of the industry's advertising. It's a little bit like going into a restaurant and thinking you're having a free meal because you don't pay up front, because the industry and government are saying it is free to the extent that customers don't pay up front. They only pay over a long period of time as that huge cost is dribbled into energy bills. And it's just worth thinking about the scale of £11 billion. For example, that could buy 44,000 much-needed starter homes. It could build 13 big city state-of-the-art hospitals, 523 schools. We're talking about an awful lot of money here, which eventually will not be paid by the energy industry and their shareholders, but will fall onto the shoulders of bill payers. And we all know already the scale of fuel poverty in this country.
I think pricing that in, you mentioned fuel poverty. The latest statistics show 20% of private renters are in fuel poverty in this country. If they're going to be using less electricity because they're going to start thinking about their use because they have the meter, how do these privatised big companies make any money off it? Surely they lose money.
Well, I think that's a very interesting area that you get us into, because if you actually look at the official documentation behind this £11 billion rollout of smart meters in the UK, it says that consumers could, if they change their behaviour, and that's a big if, they could gain about £5 billion in benefits. But £8 billion could accrue to the energy companies, and the way that they get that financial benefit is because, of course, they don't need the old-fashioned meter readers to go around to 53 million metres around the country anymore. Even more exciting for them is that for the first time ever, they'll have access to this incredible data on us and our energy use, which has tremendous value once it's unlocked. A lot of people are worried as well in the future that there could be ways that people in fuel debt could be disconnected by remote control. You won't need the bailiffs and people to actually visit the home because this system can allow remote disconnection. And of course, it allows the energy industry to know where there's energy theft going on. So there's incredible benefit for the industry, but ultimately, of course, they won't be paying a penny for this, which is why often when I talk to customers about this, they say, well, why aren't the energy companies and their shareholders footing the bill? Why should it be customers of an industry where we know there are millions of people struggling to pay their bills as it is?
What about the surveillance implications of a meter in every house?
Well, a lot of people, I think, are going to be concerned about down the line. At the moment, there's not been an awful lot of public discussion about the implications, full stop, of these smart meters. But I think when it dawns on people that their energy use data will be beamed back to the energy company, there will be concerns. Concerns on several levels. First of all, what's going to happen to it legitimately? Of course, the energy company will have that detail. Eventually, it will be able to share energy data with partners, for example, comparison sites. They'll have to go through a system of getting permission. There'll be a licensing system which will be regulated, but nevertheless, the data will be there. And we all know exactly what can happen to consumer data. We've seen enough data breaches. But there's another side to the whole thing, is what about if there is a malicious hacking? That for the first time in UK history, a malicious hacker working for a state or on an individual basis could, theoretically, turn off the electricity. I mean, that could be as dramatic as any bomb attack when it comes to the impact on UK infrastructure. So there are a lot of implications about that data and the technology that still have to be addressed.
Just very briefly, I know you invited a government minister onto this documentary that's being broadcast in the next 24 hours. They didn't come on. If it was a publicly accountable electricity system, do you think you'd have had more of a response from the government? And is it harder as a journalist to get responses from government in documentaries that you make?
It is. And let me say, for a kick-off, they didn't come and do an interview. They did give a statement. Let me tell you what they say in the statement. Out of balance and fairness, they say that they believe that smart meters will help consumers save energy and save money. But it's a very interesting thing, which I think is one of the important points about this story that goes beyond smart meters, that we have in this country now an awful lot of government policies that are actually implemented by private companies. This is a typical example. We've seen others, particularly in the transport infrastructure, HS2, Crossrail. We've seen it in the health system as well, where there's outsourcing of IT. When it comes to ministers being answerable for those projects, we're looking at a potential blind spot. Of course, the actual delivery of the projects is in the hands of companies who have an obligation to their shareholders, and therefore it's very difficult. I think it's also another layer of difficulty in infrastructure projects, which we'll have to look at in future, is that when you get buy-in from every party, as we have with smart meters and HS2, it's considered important that they all agree, so that then if a new government comes in, the project can still be rolled out. But the problem, of course, is you don't have the normal parliamentary jousting where you get a lot of scrutiny because one party is seriously questioning another's policy. If they're all got the same policy, they're all effectively riding the same horse. So you don't get that same intellectual rigour and debate that we're used to.
Chris Choi, thank you. And the documentary will be on tomorrow at 7:30 on ITV1.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Chris. And that's it for today. We'll be back on Saturday to decode what Theresa May had to say at her first PMQ since holding hands with Donald Trump in Washington. Get in touch via social media. We'll see you on Saturday. A quarter of a century to the day Hugo Chavez launched a coup against the US-backed government of Venezuela. Within 6 years, he would win victory at the ballot box by a landslide, turning the world's potentially biggest oil superpower upside down.